Bethesda has released part of the Atlantic City update. I'm to understand there's going to be a part 2 later, but we get a couple of expedition missions here in Fallout 76 that involve Atlantic City, and I checked them out, so I'm going to give you my first impressions. If you haven't done the Responders quest to get expeditions going, you obviously have to do that. I hadn't done it on this character, so I had to go and do that. But then you are free to take a vertibird for all expenses paid, vertibird to Atlantic City. So much like the rest of Fallout 76, the Atlantic City world map looks fantastic, though it's rather small. Just like with the pit, you get a little section of this new world map to, I wouldn't even say explore in, because though you can walk around and look at things, I found that if I ventured too far off the path, towards the ocean when I was trying to look at the roller coaster on part of the boardwalk, you just get massive amounts of rads, so that's their way of keeping you the hell out of there, because you'll eventually die. So what you can see of the world map is fantastic. There's 2 areas that we can check out. One is nestled deep, in downtown, and has a couple of casinos around, and we'll get to the casinos in a second. The other is like a boardwalk, and there's game, they call it a race, but it, like, you go around, you light fireworks off, and then you have to battle other contestants. You end up in an aquarium. The aquarium's really neat. There was a couple of new assets that I hadn't seen in a Fallout game before, and again, I don't play Fallout 76 as much as I used to, and so some of these new assets, could be not as new as I think they are, but I saw a jet ski, which I'd never seen in Fallout before. I thought that it seemed a little out of place, but it's still, like, the aesthetic looked right, it looked fine. There was a couple of more things that I saw, but most notably is what I believe to be a new enemy coming in from the Atlantic City update, which is the Overgrown, or Thorn, or I'm gonna call them the Overgrown. They kind of look like the creature from the Black Lagoon, swamp thing looking thing. You may like similar to lake lurks, things of that nature from New Vegas, but more like mossy, and you can see them on screen. Most of the time I've noticed, anytime something new like this gets added to a Fallout game, I'm always like, whatever. But honestly, with the exception of them, like, sometimes they have their own, like, weird guns that they use, which I thought looked a little wonky. But they look Fallout enough, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's too egregious to add these things to the game. You got to be able to add something new at some point, you know what I mean? It looks fine. They interact fine. They look fine. They're quite the foes when they're in a large group. But anyway, so what the first expedition mission that I did, and you need to be expecting the same thing pretty much that we got from the pit. I'd call it a bit more than a run and gun corridor, but not much more than a run and gun corridor, because what's funny about this Atlantic City update, specifically this one, and not so much the pit expedition update, is Bethesda seems to have given us a bunch of the set pieces and building blocks of what could be a really cool area, what could be a really fantastic place to hang out, add a bit of difference from Appalachia, but instead have used it as a set piece for their run and gun corridor. Like, there's slot machines inside the casinos. You can use these slot machines. Sometimes there's like a little side mission involved with interacting with a few of them. But you can go in and gamble at these slot machines, but you're still, constantly in combat because of the hostile enemies, because it's a run and gun corridor. And there's always a mission, you're on a time, not necessarily a time-sensitive mission, though you get a bonus for finishing everything quick. I did everything solo, which was my mistake. I recommend going in with a group. I have a shitty build, and I was able to do both expedition missions solo, but I recommend, and they're clearly built for, 2-4 people, something like that. I just didn't have a group together, and there was surprisingly nobody on. Like, I always hear about, like, how, like, there's always a ton of people on 76, and, like, I have over 1,000 friends on Steam, and as you would imagine, most of them play Fallout games, and a lot of them play 76, like over 400 of them play 76, and almost nobody was on yesterday, and that's when this launched. So I don't know if they didn't know that an update had been launched or what the deal was, but almost nobody was on. Regardless, I was able to go through both. The first one, you talk to Billy Beltbuckles. He's being strong-handed by a different mob family to give him to pay some money that he owes, and you end up getting swarmed by this group called the Showmen. They're dressed in various stage performance attire. Like one's dressed as like an Evel Knievel looking guy, like just stuff like that. So anyway, you deal with a few waves of those, and once that's over, you deal with more of them inside the casinos while doing little side quests like getting some caps from rigged slot machines and dealing with the Showman. So once that's over, there's a boss fight with I forget his name already. I already forgot his name because I don't have it pulled up here. I'm just kind of giving my first impressions raw as they were. So I don't quite remember the name of the boss. The boss was pretty challenging though. I enjoyed. He was in power armor, big, bulky. I feel like even a couple of people, like I'm sure if there was like a group of people in there, we would have taken him down pretty quickly. But me on my own, I died a few times trying to get him down, and I was able to finally. Actually, the game kind of bugged out, and they were shooting at Billy Beltbuckles, who is tied up, and I think he's immortal. Like he's essential, so he doesn't get killed. So they were just constantly hostile to him, and because they were distracted by him, I was able to focus on, because there's a bunch of showmen in there and whatever. Overall, if that's what you're looking for, they pulled it off well. If you're looking for that run and gun corridor situation that we saw in the pit, like I said, the world map, absolutely stellar, but that's the trend with Fallout 76. Its biggest strength for me has always been its world map. It looks beautiful, and Atlantic City's no different, but you are getting very small squares of this area. Like the boardwalk is like when I was walking around the boardwalk, and I realized that there's other little areas inside as you go through the quest, but like as I was walking around the boardwalk, I couldn't help but think that it felt like the same size. If you've checked out the Creation Club for Fallout 4 and you did the Capital Wasteland where you go back to GNR, it was like that size. So that's the size we're dealing with. It is not a large area. It might be a little bigger than that, but that's how it felt when I was running around in it. The second one, like I said, you go through this race of lighting off all these fireworks, and then you fight your way down into the aquarium where you meet. There's these two twins, and they're mystical. They have a lot of mystique behind them. Let's put it that way. And they're the bosses of the race. You fight one of them first, and then you end up fighting both of them at the end. The aquarium, like I said, looked really neat. I think the aesthetic fit well within Fallout. Someone was tasked with designing a aquarium, and I think they actually did a pretty good job. Usually with newer Fallouts, you get, well, it's the 1950s, and then it got nuked. But this person, actually, whoever designed this area, to me, it felt like they thought about what did people in the 1950s think the future would look like, and used a lot of retrofuturism with this, and it looks really nice. I noticed a reused situation at the end here. Is her name Charlotte? I think her name's Mother Charlotte. Again, don't have it pulled up in front of me. These are just my raw first impressions of the experience. But the same pose as the lady inside the memory den in Fallout 4, like on the couch, same pose, same vibe, really. I forget her name too. But the lady inside the memory den that, lets you go through all your memories with Nick Valentine and stuff. But I had noticed that, I was like, oh, that looks like the same situation, and I believe it is. Again, my first impressions of this are a little bit of disappointment, because it's like, it would be nice that if Fallout 76 is going to release new world maps and new worlds for people, I said this with the pit, and I'll say it with Atlantic City, and I don't know what part 2 is going to be. Maybe part 2 will have more of this vibe, but being able to explore, even build a camp, have it actually be a separate world map that's a part of the game, that would be tremendous, because you go to these cool places and you don't really get a chance to check them all out, and you can't really check them all out anyway because you're only shown what's like right there. There's no depth to them. I just would like to. I feel like it would benefit the game. Again, like, I'm not as into it as I used to be, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that currently play 76, and this is maybe right up their alley. So like I said, if what I've described to you sounds like it's, oh, that's excellent, that's awesome, then it's definitely for you. You're gonna love it. But that's my first impressions. The new enemies with the overgrown, like I said, at first I was like, that's weird. At first I was like, I don't know about these, but then like, after I thought about it, I was like, you know, they look fine. They look true to Fallout. Like it's fine. And then the gameplay, like I said, if you enjoy going there to shoot a bunch of things and finish essentially a like a longer side quest, an hour-long side quest if you're doing it solo, then yeah, man, it's right up your alley. If not, you'll probably be a little bit disappointed like I was. But again, my disappointment isn't as bad as it was for the pit, because we didn't know what expeditions were when the pit came out. Like we like had an idea, but people were still speculating of, oh, what could this be, what could this be. So since it was called an expedition, I kind of had that expectation anyway, so I wasn't like, oh man, super disappointed, but it was more like, oh, okay, so this is what expeditions are going to be. Anyways, that's my first impressions. I thank you for checking them out, and I hope you have a good one. It has been Mantis.